Hey there, graphic designers. Today we're going to take a look at layers, which is our way of staying organized in Illustrator. My layers palette is down here on the right hand side. We can pull it off and move it around if we need to. If for some reason it ever gets closed or hidden, if we go to the window pull down menu, all of our palettes are in alphabetical order, so I can come back down to layers, open it back up. I'm going to leave this over on the right hand side here so we can sort of see the full thing. We'll make it a little bit shorter here. As we start drawing, we get a little arrow that pops up next to our layer, and those are our sub layers. So underneath we can see that we drew a rectangle. If I take and switch shapes and I make a circle, it places it on there as well. We can take and make a new layer. So when I hit that new layer button right down here, it creates a brand new layer, and then I can also start drawing on that layer, and whichever layer is highlighted is the layer that I'm actually working on. We have a little eyeball by the layers, which is our visibility. So I have the two circles that are drawn on this layer 2 right here. So when I turn off the eyeball, that layer gets hidden. I can bring it back by clicking on it, and I can do the same for the other layer. We have a lock button, which locks us from moving, drawing, editing, doing anything on that layer. So even though this layer is selected, if I come over here to try and draw on it, we get the pencil with the no symbol. So we're not able to actually draw anything. We can't move, we can't select or anything like that. If I double click on the name, we can rename this layer. So to help stay organized, we always want to name our layers. We have a little circle on the right hand side, which is a shortcut for selecting everything that's on that layer. So if I click on this little circle, my two circles that were drawn on that layer become selected. If I click on the one below it, the other two will get selected. If I double click on one of the images that's on the layer, it brings up a lot of the same options. So I could also name my layer in here. I could either show or hide it, which is the eyeball. Preview turns it to an outline, so we don't see much changing right here, but the lines that actually make up that object have changed. We could lock it, we could set the layer to not print, and we could dim the image as well if we were taking and using it for a template for drawing or something like that. Down here in the bottom right, we have our options for deleting the layer. So if I made a layer and want to get rid of it, we can trash it. If it ever contains anything drawn on it, it'll always prompt you if you actually want to get rid of this layer. Like we said before, we have that new layer button where we can make a new layer. We could organize sublayers right here, but we're not going to do that much with this class right now, so we'll leave that how it is. And then we can also reorganize the layers. So each of these layers is sort of like a separate sheet of paper. If I wanted to move my larger circle below my other two smaller circles, normally I would do an object arrange, but because they're on different layers, this doesn't work. So I need to physically take this layer and reorganize it by dragging it downward. So now that layer is below. The one thing that we got to be careful of is dragging it on top of. So right now that layer below is highlighted blue, so when I drop it, it creates a sub layer where it's all scooted over to the right and they're all part of that same layer now. If I hit that little arrow, you can see that it's a single layer. We don't want to create sub layers. We want to keep them as separate layers. So when you're dragging, you got to make sure it is below the layer. So even if I add another layer in here, that would be dragging on top of, and that is dragging in between. And we can see how they get reorganized versus becoming sub layers for each other. So now I'm going to switch over to the assignment. This is pretty straightforward. We have all of our parts of the rainbow right here. None of the layers are named. Our directions down here say to arrange the rainbow and then hide the directions. So the way that we're going to do this is if we click on the circle, we can see like this is the green grass. So we can come in here, rename this. And as I go through, so for like this one right here, if I click on it, we're not looking at the color that is highlighted. We're looking at the color over here of the actual object. So we can see that that's the red one. So if I double click, I could rename that red. So we would come through and reorganize all these, rename all these. Once they're all renamed, then we would start reorganizing. So the grass has got to go on top of everything. So I can take this layer, drag it upward, and put it on top. We can see that our red is looking all right here, but our orange has that weird shape to it. So there's actually supposed to be a yellow that's supposed to be right in here. So this layer 10 right here, we can see is that yellow color. So we would drag that yellow on top of the orange. Our green is looking messed up, so our blue should be on top of the green. So I'll grab that blue, put it on top of green, and then our purple's there. We also have some sun and clouds on here. So I could take the sun, drag it up on top of to the top so that this way we can see it. And then the clouds, I believe is this layer 9. And we would drag that up as well. And I'm making sure that I'm always dropping in between. Once everything looks pretty, we would go through here, rename everything, and then the last thing that we got to do is make sure that we hide those directions. Then we could take and save this and turn this in.